Hello there.
Welcome back to episode 69 of Star Wars in a Galaxy. Today, we are taking a look at the unknown conspiracy, fugitive, and orders in our chronological rewatch of Star Wars The Clone Wars. These are some really hefty episodes, which is ironic given that it's the episode number, as Eli pointed out to me before we started recording. But yeah, anything you want to say before we hop in, Eli?
No, just welcome back to Star Wars in the Galaxy, watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. I'm Eli.
I'm Jacob, as
Um,
always.
yeah, by the way, this is the start of Season 9 of Star Wars in a Galaxy, so
Yes, it
very
is
excited to
season
get into
six of the
this.
Clone Wars.
Yeah,
Wait
absolutely.
a minute.
Oh. Wait, Season 9, Season 6. This is Illuminati right here. This
This
is
is
just...
this is Illuminati
The Illuminati
confirmed.
has conspired to do this for us. They're just...
I think Fives would want to talk to the Chancellor about this.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I
he
think
would.
Fives would
But
wanna
before we
have
talk
something to
about
say about
Fives, the
that.
Chancellor, Shaak Ti, all those great characters, let's talk about Boba Fett.
Oh my
The
gosh.
Book of Boba Fett, Episode 2. The Tribes of Tatooine released the Wednesday before we're recording this. We're recording this post 2, pre 3. By the time this comes out, 3 will have already been released, and I will have already been on the Bombad Cast stream. If you have not checked that out, I'm sure it will have been a fun time. I can say that. Go check the Bombad Cast out. I'm on there with Jared from the Nerd Academy podcast and Connor from the Nerd Academy podcast, along with Scotty and Jerry from the Bombad Cast. But yeah, let's talk about Tribes of Tatooine, or as Jacob calls it, a top 10 episode of Star Wars television. He texted that to me the
Yes,
day it came out.
I stand by that. I stand by that after having watched it a second time.
That's a bold statement.
Yeah, I really loved this episode. I thought it was
Yeah.
absolutely tremendous. Just for Boba Fett as a character, obviously amazing. Tamura Morrison, as always, doing an incredible job bringing that character to life. Pretty cool to see him, go from playing Django to going to play Boba. Not sure many people saw that coming.
Yeah.
um, when Attack of the Clones came out, but Ahsoka's. I really liked how they portrayed the Sand People in a different light, and just got we just got to see them not as villains and not just as killers, but as beings, as people.
Yeah. I definitely enjoyed both parts of the story. However, the one that's really catching my intrigue right now, even though I think the Tuscan storyline is great, the part catching my intrigue right now is the present day part of the story, because of the introduction of the twins, the two Hutts that are coming to take
Yes.
over, and who they got as their guardian. They got Black Chrysanthemum from the comics. He got introduced in comics 5 years ago, and now he's a live-action TV character. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah.
I tweeted at Kieran Gillen the day the episode came out, because he's the writer that originated Black Chrysanthemum, and apparently he doesn't even know how to say it. He made up the character. He doesn't know how to pronounce his name, so we're just all... I've heard Kier Santan or Kersantan. I pronounce
Yeah.
it Kersantan, but I don't know. It's... We see so much of the culture of Tatooine from both the settler side of Tatooine, the big cities, your Mos Espa, and then also, of course, from your nomadic Tusken Raiders perspective, which I think are equally valid to see how the culture of Tatooine is evolving. I'm really excited for 3. Actually, I think I should tell you this, Jacob. Did you know that it was recently announced that Filoni is going to be directing 6?
I did not know that. No,
Yeah,
that is exciting, though.
Filoni's
That is
directing
very exciting.
6 of the 7 episodes. Not 6 as in total, but like episode 6 of the chapter 6 of the Book of Boba Fett. Many have
Yeah.
been speculating that's going to be, we're going to see a character like an Omega or an Ahsoka or somebody in that episode, which I don't know, maybe not necessarily, but I just find it interesting.
Yeah,
Also,
definitely.
big shout out to Steph Green. This is her first live action Star Wars episode of television, and she started on a real high note, I gotta say.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Very excited for next season. For next episode. Wow. I'm never very excited for next episode. Should we get into the clone episodes, or do you got more stuff to say about Boba Fett?
I don't know. I think I'm good on Boba Fett. I don't know. I thought it was a really good episode. I enjoyed it immensely. You should have heard my reaction when Black Chrysanthemum came in, because I kind of knew about that character. I'd read some of the comics, but I wasn't not enough to be 100% certain. So I was kind of like, wait, is that who I think it is? Is that who I think it is? I was really hyped.
I remember my specific reaction. I was like, for the next 10 minutes, the whole plot was going on in front of me, but in the back of my mind, I was still thinking, we just saw Black Chrysanthemum in live action.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
And then the fact that they brought back the Pikes as well.
Yeah.
That was a great touch. I really appreciated seeing the Pikes
the lead
again.
one's voiced by Stephen Stanton?
I know. Crazy stuff.
Yeah, so first Whitwer in the first episode, and now Stephen Stanton in the second one.
Yeah.
Apparently all of the Clone Wars Rebels cast is just coming back.
Yeah. And yeah, I just loved also, the Lawrence of Arabia. I feel like the Lawrence of Arabia references, if you've seen that movie, a couple shots that are just straight out of that movie. The train scene with the Pike Spice train is just, I don't know. It's just like the railway scene to me in Lawrence of Arabia. I thought that was cool. And I don't know, looking at the scene side by side, I thought it had to be intentional, but maybe that's just me.
Actually, so the director of photography for this episode and the fourth episode, I just found out, is a guy named Dean Cundy, who's a very, very famous director of photography. He did the entire Back to the Future trilogy. He did Jurassic Park. He did a bunch of he did Hook. He did Apollo 13. He did just a bunch of very famous movies, and so that was why the cinematography was of a different level in this episode, I'd say. So
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you have more to say, or do you want to?
Let's go into the episodes.
In The Unknown, we see a heated battle for the space station surrounding the aptly named Ringo Vinda, because it is encircling the entire planet. The Jedi, Skywalker, Tipley, Tiplar, the clones, they're pushing back the droids, who are commanded by Admiral Trench, when all of a sudden Tup has a mysterious breakdown and executes Jedi General Tiplar. Wait, is it Tipley or Tiplar?
You were right. It was Tiplar.
Yeah. Tup then executes Tiplar, has some sort of breakdown, which of course turns out to be a malfunctioning inhibitor chip. We're going full spoilers, I guess.
Yeah.
Of course. So we see the battle for Ringo Vinda. Trench suspects that something is amiss. And so he contacts Dooku and says, "Hey, I just witnessed a Jedi get executed by one of the clones. What's up?" So now Dooku knows that something's wrong. So then we see as Tup's unconscious body is being transported in a shuttle for further examination back to Camino. Is it?
Yeah.
Or did they?
It's
as he's going to be transported back to Camino, he is intercepted. He is intercepted by a droid battalion. They hijack the ship and they steal Tup's body. However, Anakin then leads Fives and some other clones to take back the body, and they successfully recover it and transport him to Camino for testing.
Absolutely. Our fortune cookie is: the truth about yourself is always the hardest to accept.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, great fortune cookie. I think it's a great fortune cookie.
Absolutely.
What do you think?
This could be referring to, the obvious one for me is, the one I go straight to is Tup, but I think it's actually about Fives, and it's sort of a summary of this whole arc, is that Fives is going to go down this rabbit hole, and it's going to give him harder and harder truths to accept. And Tup also has to face some truths about himself in the little that in the little bit longer that he has to live. But I think it really is about Fives and what his overall role is in this conflict.
Yeah, 100%. I think that is also true. I think it's true for a lot of people in this episode. I think it's true for Anakin. I think it's true for a lot of the clones. You know, it's a weird choice of fortune cookie as we don't actually get to the truth in this episode. Obviously, it takes a lot longer, but the way that they are all convinced that it must be a virus or it must be outside separatist tampering, rather than it just being a clone betrayal, as we previously seen, or some kind of problem with the clones themselves, as evidenced by Tup muttering, "Good soldiers follow orders," showing that, hey, maybe it's some kind of order. I think this shows how the Jedi and the clones are subconsciously, just subconsciously, maybe they're choosing not to explore the scariest and most painful possibilities, which is similar to the problem that plagues a lot of the Jedi and the Republic as a whole at this time. But yeah, you know, for the Jedi, this truth would not necessarily be about them, but it would be, maybe we've been hoodwinked, maybe we've been misled, maybe the clones aren't actually loyal to us. And then the clones, of course, the inhibitor chip. What would that all be about? You know?
Yeah. I wrote this a lot in my notes as we were going through, but it's interesting to me that the first arc following Ahsoka's trial is about another person who runs from the law, even though they're innocent.
Yeah, that is very interesting. I mean, it's this episode right after the Ahsoka arc. This is definitely a 1-2 punch. This is the Clone Wars saying, "Oh, you thought you were getting off easy? Oh no, we're not going back to normal."
Yeah, and it's ironic because the Ahsoka arc is actually the more optimistic ending of the two.
You think so?
Yeah, because the actual murderer gets caught, the plan is unveiled, and the innocent goes free.
Yeah, I think you may be right.
The conspiracy is hidden, and the innocent dies. Like, sure, clones die in the other one, but, like, at least the murderer of the clones get caught. In this one, 2 clones get shot who are absolutely innocent, except for one of them killed a Jedi because of something they couldn't even control. You know? But I find it interesting. I also found this. So, the Republic is portrayed as the antagonists of both of these arcs.
And they are.
So, what?
I think they are.
Yeah. No, yeah. And it's interesting one of the things that this arc does, and this season, because I'm a huge Season 6 fan. It's maybe my favorite season of the Clone Wars. One of the things I think that Season 6 does so well is it shows how the Republic and the galaxy of Attack of the Clones becomes the Republic and the galaxy of Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, absolutely.
And we see, as we're getting more and more used to the Republic becoming the antagonists, we start to get more and more used to the idea that the Empire could exist.
Yeah, 100%. I think you're definitely right. Season 6 especially really starts saying, okay, it's time to put the gas on this transition to the status quo that we see in Revenge of the Sith. And I think this arc especially, it was striking to me rewatching it how much the clones, a lot of the clones become these kind of silent uniform, black and white, almost stormtrooper-like figures, and they really become the bad guys, at least on Kamino, for a lot of the arc. Also, I think the Jedi, like with Shaak Ti, I think they're becoming, and they're being portrayed as increasingly naive, I think, which is trying to lead us up to the situation that we end up with in Revenge of the Sith.
I agree that the Jedi are naive. I actually don't think that Shaak Ti is that naive. I actually think Shaak Ti is one of the good ones, actually.
Really?
All of the action
even after everything she lets just slide right by her in this episode. Do you think so?
I mean, here's the thing. I think Shaak Ti. I don't think Shaak Ti's perfect. I don't think she's at all perfect. But I think she has a better understanding of like morality and stuff than most of the Jedi do, frankly. Like if we had to put her on when we were talking in the last episode, not the last episode, but the last episodic episode with Ahsoka's trial, if we're talking about the politics of the Jedi Council, I definitely see Shaak Ti leaning towards the more Obi-Wan Plo Koon members than the more Ki-Adi-Mundi Mace Windu members.
Yeah.
It might just be me, but I think because she has this compassion to her.
I don't know. I thought her compassion in this arc was completely gone. She kept referring to fives and Tup especially as the Republic property, the Jedi property. And I really didn't think that she saw them as I really didn't think she really saw them as people or as individuals as much as tools of the Republic. In its case, a broken tool.
She was talking to Nala Se while she was saying that, so I think I don't think she considers them as Republic property. I think she was just trying to meet Say where she was.
I mean,
I don't know. I think she was trying to use Say's language to convince her of certain things.
Possibly.
Yeah. There's that line, I'm not doing this because it's not a matter of belief, Fives. I'm not doing this because it's a matter of belief, Fives. She says this at the end of the 3rd episode, Fugitive. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. Somebody's actually doing something that's the right thing to do. Yay. Anyway, yeah.
Do you wanna jump into Ringo Vinda?
Yeah. So the build up to this arc, the build up to the inciting incident of this arc is, in my opinion, incredibly well done. It's one of those things where, like, this arc is a very good tragedy. It's a very good example of a tragedy because you know exactly what's going to happen. You know exactly how much the heroes are going to fail. And yet you're just kind of sitting there all watching it unfold.
Yeah, that is one of the defining features, I think, of the later Clone Wars that makes it, or that's part of what makes it so compelling. It's ironic almost then that I thought, I kind of thought that the Ringo Vinda battle, to me, it felt like a throwback to the early Clone Wars. This battle, we had one of these big set piece battles, lots of clones, lots of droids, lots of blaster fire. That was something that is kind of
Trench hovering over it all, like the evil maniacal villains of seasons 1 and 2.
That's kind of something that we see a lot in 1, 2, and to some extent 3 and 4, and then we really see that kind of trail off as the show obviously shifts around its stories and its focuses. But especially I love the outlandish, electric guitar inspired music. It all really felt like a callback to the big battles and the funky soundtracks that really make me love early Clone Wars.
Yeah, I agree. I do also love, I gotta say, I love that, just jumping ahead a little bit, when Tup commits the murder, notice what the camera does. The camera is pretty darn stable before that, but it just kind of jumps around after that. It's like shaky and it goes all different places. You're no longer focused on the battle. It becomes less about showing what's physically happening and showing what's emotionally happening. It's incredible. Also, I think we need to address another elephant in the room. We have some terrible news, everyone. Somehow, Admiral Trench survived.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I liked... I liked seeing Trench come back.
Yeah. It's
Even
really
if
random, though.
even if he did get absolutely blown to bits
Yep.
in Cat and Mouse.
Yeah.
I really didn't mind it. It wasn't something to me that bugged me. Yeah, it didn't really bug me too much, honestly. I kind of liked seeing him back. Plus, with the cyborg getup, I thought really added something to his kind of outlandish his outlandish demeanor. I don't know. What do you think?
It, I don't hate it, but like it's just so random. Like they just put Trench in because yeah, we want to put Trench in again.
Yeah, it
It
definitely easily could have been someone else, but I don't know.
yeah.
I'm glad it was Trench.
I will say Trench. I forgot how competent Trench is compared to a lot of the other separatists. Like I would take Trench over, Riff Tamsin or OC Sobek or Nuvo Vindi or Lockdirt any day of the week because he seems to know what he's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He is a lot more. He just has that air of competence that a lot of the other separatist flunkies that we see get trotted out in the Clone Wars. A lot of them kind of lack that sense that they know what they're doing, and yeah, Trench may be a little bit of a goofball when all is said and done.
Oh, absolutely.
For all his bluster and all his posturing, he kind of
He gets stuff
he
done.
gets outsmarted. He gets outsmarted, but in the end, he still gets stuff done. And if gosh, I'm blanking on the admiral's name. If Admiral Yularen's stories are anything to go by, no,
This guy's someone to be
clearly he's a
feared.
little different. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
someone to be feared. So I like that they brought him back. I can't imagine them doing anything else with him, but it would be
Yeah.
cool to see him make an appearance.
Well, he's dead
Yeah,
in the Bad Batch.
yeah.
He dies
But
in the Bad Batch. Yeah.
Star Wars jumps
Oh
around
yeah.
in
No, I
time. So
just
I mean,
sorry. I thought you thought he was still alive after
no, no,
Clone
no, no,
Wars.
no,
Okay.
no, no, no.
Okay.
He's dead, but
Yeah.
no, it would be cool
Jumping back in
to see
time.
him.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which episode do they? How does he die again? I
Anakin
can't remember.
stabs him.
In what episode?
Unfinished Business, season 7, episode 4.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Um.
remember now. I
Yeah.
remember.
I don't have such weaknesses. Um. Um. Anyway. So I also want to point out this one when Tup says to Fives, I don't feel like myself. It's some of that slow burn that just eats at you. You know what I mean? You know exactly why Tup doesn't feel like himself. At least for me, it was like I know why it's happening, but I just kind of gotta sit there and watch it happen.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
definitely. That's kind of the way you have to sit there for a lot of the Clone Wars. Like,
yeah,
oh shoot, this is gonna happen.
yeah,
Deal with it.
yeah.
It's too bad, man.
And then we get the 4 words that I think change have changed the entire narrative around Order 66 ever since they were introduced in this episode. Good soldiers
Yeah,
follow orders. Good soldiers follow orders. Kill the Jedi.
yeah,
Good soldiers follow orders. I've been thinking a lot about good soldiers follow orders and why that's the quote that the clones possessed by 66 say.
yeah,
And it's like this weird form of extreme loyalty and obsession to the Republic that's like kind of nuts. It's incredibly well architected by Palpatine, I gotta say. This whole scheme, this whole arc shows you exactly how well schemed Order 66 was.
yeah. Absolutely.
I also think it's funny because remember, I want you to remember way back to when we were talking with the first time we talked with Mr. Alden Diaz in February of 2021 about the Geonosis arc, the second Battle of Geonosis arc. Do you remember we
Yeah,
talked about the line, "Good things those bugs can't aim," and
yeah,
then the ship gets blown up?
Yeah, right before they get blown out of the sky. Yeah,
So-
classic.
So the clones are comparing themselves as better than Geonosians, right?
Yeah.
When in reality, the clones, I would argue, and the Geonosians are exactly the same.
Really?
Yeah,
How so?
they're both of them are independent thinkers, and they're both good soldiers. But when they they both have a version of a hive mind that they use to join together and try and conquer their goals and become completely different than they were before. The Geonosians with the brainworms and the clones with the inhibitor chips. They serve the same purpose. It's like, you know, I also pointed out that the clone in my notes that the clones are becoming almost robotic, like droids with this inhibitor chip. Yeah. It's Palpatine giving the Republic an army and saying it's different from the Separatists, but having it be exactly the same.
In a way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting for sure. I mean, yeah, I guess we could talk about the inhibitor chips more later, but do you wanna keep going with the plot of the episode, or do we want to talk more about the inhibitor chips? What do you feel we should move through now?
Do you have thoughts about the inhibitor chips, like, right now, or do you want to do that later?
Well, I don't know. Let's just do it later. Let's do it later. I feel like at the end of the episode, once we've covered more ground, that might be better.
You got anything about the death of Tiplar or that battle, or do you...
To me, it's not very sad, surprisingly, just because we have barely seen Tiplar. So this is kind of more the inciting incident,
Yeah.
rather than something that that the story focuses on. They don't really give the characters any time to mourn, really.
Yeah. That's actually going to be the first thing I talk about, is like Tipley does not mourn at all.
Yeah, no.
It's so sad.
She seems
she
more
lost
angry.
her twin sister, and she's just like, okay, so we're going to carry on with trying to figure out why this clone did this?
Yeah.
I'm like, no, your sister just died. I mean, come on.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's why she feels so motivated just to keep going and try to get to the bottom of what.
Yeah. I know, but the Jedi stoicism is kind of ridiculous sometimes. Yeah. I will say this. Did you know that Tip Lee also falls before the Clone Wars are over?
No. How does she? How does she
She's
go
killed
down?
by Dooku.
Really? In what media? Where is she in the comics?
The Son of Dathomir comic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
'Cause
so she's killed by Dooku before the end of the war.
I would have loved to see more of Tipley and Tiplar, because
I would have too. Yeah.
I thought their character design was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And we didn't really, and as characters, they didn't really get to get fleshed out.
They
But
were kind of there as plot
visuals-
devices, to be completely honest.
they were kind of plot devices, but I was surprised by how almost angry Tipley was. With Tup when she
Revenge is not the Jedi way.
picked him up, put him into the wall with the Force, and then dropped him down again. That was surprising to me.
Yeah.
But maybe that was another hint at, hey, maybe the clones aren't treated as well as they deserve to be by some of their generals.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think about Trench's conversation with Dooku?
I'll say this about Trench's conversation with Dooku. This is a problem I had about Trench's conversation with Dooku. Trench just told him something very important. An inhibitor chip in the clone, or like what he suspects is an inhibitor chip in the clone, just activated in his head. And Dooku sends rocket droids.
Yeah. Maybe that is a little bit of an interesting story choice. You'd think at least he'd send, I don't know, maybe some Magna Guards.
I was like, send Grievous. What's Grievous doing
right
now?
Grievous.
Or like,
Surely
what are you
there's
doing?
nothing
Or
more-
you're just sitting in your pajamas on Serena. What are you doing right now, Dooku? I mean, this is the most important secret of your master's plan, and you send like a dozen droids after it? Are you kidding me?
Yeah. That is a bit of a maybe that is a little bit of a foolish decision, but
And then at the end of the last episode, he brags to Palpatine about it. He brags to Palpatine about getting all the stuff back. I'm like, yeah, all the stuff's back, but Palpatine actually did more to get the chips back to the Sith than you did. Why are you bragging to him?
yeah, no, that was hilarious.
So weird.
Yeah, I love that conversation between Trench and Dooku though, because of just the dramatic irony with what Trench was saying when he's thinking that he's in on something now, that he's helping uncover what is this great mystery, according to my calculations, this shouldn't happen, yada yada yada. Dooku's like, oh boy. Dooku's like, okay, wait, maybe I'm in deep shit. Trench has no idea.
Trench
has no idea at all
dipped his foot
what
into.
what he has dipped his toes into. It's hilarious almost, all these separatists especially, they just
it's like, aha, Count, I have just discovered the key to this mystery. Okay, and yeah, no, that is pretty funny. Yeah. I gotta say also, you notice how they often do the whole, like, remains of a battle scene? When Anakin and Rex and Fives go to investigate the shuttle that they blew up and took Tut from.
yeah.
Like, they go through the wreckage and I don't know, they do that really well. They how do I say it? They peel back the layers.
Yes. Peel back the layers.
That was literally the first thought that I had. I also like grappling onto that escaping shuttle at the end.
Yeah. No, that
is
was
such
awesome.
a Star Wars plan.
Yeah, it is such a Star Wars plan. That part, I love that part, honestly. It's been seasons and seasons since I've been able to talk about this for a while now. I've been waiting. Battle Droid Society. We have a glimpse.
We have a
glimpse right here.
I also love the line.
We were experiencing drag in the vacuum of space.
Wait,
yeah, no.
Drag? That's impossible.
Well, yeah, that's what what is it? The B1 says, oh, we were experiencing some drag for a minute there, but it's gone now. He says, you were experiencing drag in the vacuum of space. But just the way he said that, you could tell, or I guess the droid, I don't know what pronouns they probably use, but the droid, the tactical droid's probably so disappointed, or the super tactical droid.
They're like,
yeah.
What?
Face palm.
No, my favorite part is the little banter that Rex and Anakin have. Wait, are you really thinking that? That's reckless, even for you, General. Rex, you're starting to sound like Obi-Wan. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, you got anything else for this episode?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool.
I got a lot for this episode. I thought that I honestly thought that this episode is really showing, at least execution-wise, how much the Clone Wars is maturing and becoming more polished. There were so many moments where I just thought, wow, the scene of the rocket droids breaking onto the ship is absolutely terrifying. Just watching the clones get killed by that, it's kind of astonishing what a dark show it's become, knowing where it came from. And then when Rex and the clones are, when Rex and Anakin, the clones are coming on board, just watching the lifeless clone bodies float around, that's just
it's intense. It's really intense. And like the crazy scale and angles that they do when they're climbing aboard the Separatist dreadnought, like, yeah, this is the season 6 pushed a lot of new heights for the Clone Wars. They may be the lost missions, but I've found that they're really quite exceptional. But
they are, yes. Nice one. Yeah, no, I like these episodes quite a bit more than I have previously. But yeah, I mean, the entire idea of the inhibitor chip, that's all I had for this episode. So for the episode as a whole, I found I took issue this time when I thought about it afterwards, the idea of the inhibitor chip, because the more I think about it, the more I kind of dislike the fact that they made it a chip in the clones' brains that caused Order
Really
66.
interesting.
Yeah, but because I feel like on the one hand you could argue that it was necessary because the clones were so humanized in the Clone Wars, and so many of them really developed these relationships, these close relationships and bonds with their Jedi generals, people like Cody, uh, Wolf, for example, Rex, obviously, and more. But
Bly.
I still think, pardon?
Bly, I was saying.
Fly, yeah. I still think they could have pulled it off if it was just an order, and I think that could have been more powerful, being a commentary on the condition of being a soldier and following orders, and with the tagline "Good soldiers follow orders." I think that could be easily just as well applicable, and I think it could have been used, after we see the Pong Krell arc, after we see how Shaak Ti behaves in this episode. I thought it could be really revealing of how most clones maybe felt about their Jedi generals, or how much the Jedi were really blinded by Palpatine and tricked into thinking that the clones were actually loyal to them and not simply the Republic. Because I think that the inhibitor chip plot line, and the existence of the inhibitor chips, it kind of takes away weight from the fact that all the clones end up turning on their Jedi because they don't have a choice. And I think that, with moral agency and the power of our choices being, in my mind, the central theme of Star Wars, like the number one thing that Star Wars is about, it seems odd to me that the clones end up not even making any kind of a choice, even the choice to follow the orders, even if that is to execute their generals, because they think they're keeping the Republic safe. And I think just the fact that it becomes a feat of technology rather than of psychology, yeah, it just robs it of some of the weight, and to me, it makes it a little bit less of an accomplishment on Palpatine's part. But I'd love to hear what you think, because I know that you are more of you don't really take issue with it in the same way that I do.
Yeah, I think I tend to a little bit. I see where you're coming from. My thing is, I think your idea, while it would have been incredible, I agree with that. I think would have been a little harder to implement story-wise. I think it would have been a little harder to do and explain. We already have so many growing, extending strands through the Clone Wars of things building and building and building. I'm not exactly sure how that one would go. I personally like the chips because... I personally, my thing with the chips is, the meaning I can find in them is they make the clones like the very droids they're fighting against. And that, there are some clones, that do have choices. Rex makes the choice, and Fives makes the choice. The Bad Batch makes the choice, and then we'll see Gregor and Wolf make the choice.
It's hard to for me to say that a lot of them have choices when it's only a select few clones who know about the inhibitor chips.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Wait.
Yeah, but I agree. I definitely think it would have been.
Yeah.
I definitely think it would have been a little bit harder to execute and to make it work in the Clone Wars. But, I think that a victory and death type episode, a shattered type episode, without the inhibitor chips, like an episode that covers that kind of time, like Order 66, but with a little bit more of a perspective to explain what's actually happening, to give more background to to people saying like, what the heck is going on in Revenge of the Sith. I think it could have been just as successful if it was just saying like, if the clones were just like, we are loyal to the Republic, not to the Jedi, you know?
Yeah, I
Something
will say
like that.
also,
And obviously they'd have to go a little more in depth, but
yeah.
in my mind, I think that could work as well.
And then there's like, first of all, I actually disagree with the whole Victory and Death and Shattered episodes. I actually like that for the purposes of those episodes that they're a bit more robotic and controlled by the chips because it makes it so that Ahsoka is fought by these people and they have her loyalty, but then that loyalty is just suddenly turned off and she has to deal with that kind of stuff. I would also point out a little bit of a plot hole that would need to be resolved if we were taking that route. With Cody in Sith, in Revenge of the Sith,
yeah,
because when he gives Obi-Wan his lightsaber, he goes, "So I think you'll be needing this." It's actually Tamora. "So I think you'll be needing this." And then Obi-Wan rides the Varactyl, and then moments later he gets Order 66, and he chooses to execute it without mercy.
Yeah, I think that if there was no inhibitor chip, I think that would be an even more powerful moment. Just kind of a lesson of like, oh shit, the clones aren't actually on our side, and maybe we were foolish or we were manipulated and misled into thinking that, you know, because obviously these clones have some of them tight relationships and loyalty to their Jedi masters. But I just think it could be an interesting commentary on what does it mean to follow orders and follow orders unquestioningly. I mean, that wouldn't change the fact that these clones have been conditioned to follow orders. They've been conditioned to have less individuality. We hear that in Attack of the Clones. So personally, I think that if there was, I think that with the knowledge of no inhibitor, if there is no knowledge of inhibitor chips, or if there's a different explanation, I think that moment hits harder for me personally.
Okay. I don't know. For me, it's just like, you know, he gives him the lightsaber, and then 2 seconds later, he's shooting at him. Like,
yeah, I think that I think that honestly works. It's like, well, those are the orders. Like, the Jedi have betrayed the Republic. Like, we have to do what we have to do.
Yeah.
And then later, maybe you have the oh shit moment from Cody if he finds out what he needs to find out. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think your ideas are
I see how it could like be. I see how it could seem incongruous, but I feel like with just a little bit of extra explanation, I think it could really hit hard personally.
It's a very interesting idea. I admire the creativity of the idea. I'm not sold on it just generally because I don't know, the inhibitor chips are just kind of what I'm used to. But
yeah,
yeah. You want to go on to conspiracy?
Yeah. I mean, I have a couple trivia.
Oh, go right ahead.
I have a couple trivia tidbits actually. So the concept of Ringo Vinno was actually first developed for Revenge of the Sith, but it was not used. Clone Commander Doom's armor, Doom is the green armored clone commander serving under Tipli and Tiplar, is actually closely modeled after the coloration of the classic Marvel comic villain Doctor Doom, which that totally went over my head when I was watching the episode, even though I knew his name was Commander Doom. But when you see a picture of Doctor Doom, you're like, wow, of course.
Yeah.
Tipli and Tiplar were also inspired by some Ian McCaig concept art for a female Sith Lord for Attack of the Clones that went unused, actually. So yeah, that's all the trivia that I could find. I could rustle up.
Yeah. Good stuff. Should we get to conspiracy?
Conspiracy. Let's do it.
Go ahead.
So in conspiracy, Tup has been recovered, but Tup and Fives are taken to medical research on Kamino, and Fives is forced to stay on Kamino because Nala Se and the Kaminoans want to find out if there is anything wrong with him as well, if he was exposed to the virus, same as Tup, because they believe it is a virus. However, pretty quickly, Fives becomes horrified by the treatment that they are giving to Tup. Shaak Ti and Nala Se end up in a power struggle over Tup. Nala Se wants to execute or terminate Tup to perform a full autopsy obviously she knows about the inhibitor chips and she needs to cover it up. However, Shaak Ti and Shaak Ti is pushing for a Shaak Ti is pushing for a molecular scan, a level 5 atomic scan, I believe they say. I
Level
can't
top
remember
5
exactly.
atomic brain scan. Yeah.
Yeah, level top 5 atomic brain scan. Um, so yeah, that happens. Fives does some sneaking around, and he he okay, wait, pause. He executes the brain scan in this episode. I'm getting
Yeah, he does.
what he does. Yeah.
He's
Fives executes the brain scan. He uses some distractions to get his way.
with AZ3.
However, with the help of the droid AZ3, yes. However, he is found out, and he gets in hot water with the Kaminoans, and he is to be imprisoned. And that's kind of where it leaves off to segue into the next episode. And oh yes, and Tup dies, of course. How could I forget? Tup dies shortly after the inhibitor chip is removed, which ostensibly is supposed to be caused by the inhibitor chip being removed, but actually his health was just deteriorating, and it was probably just too much strain for him. But the inhibitor chip causing his death is probably that's probably what Nala Se wants the Jedi to think, so that they think the inhibitor chips are good.
Yes, absolutely. Our fortune cookie is the wise benefit from a second opinion.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. This whole episode, I think, plays like a medical drama.
Absolutely,
true
it
to
does.
the use of the words second opinion. I really like that part. I like that aspect of this episode. And I think it's a stark reminder of how important it is that healthcare truly has the patient's best interests first and foremost. And it's really a shame in this episode to see how both Lama Su, or not Lama Su, but yeah, Lama Su actually, Lama Su, Nala Se, Shaak Ti, all kind of, they have a they have more invested in the power struggle and using Tup to try and find out what's wrong with the clones. And Fives is the only one who really cares about Tup
as a person.
As a person.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's a quote I'm coming back to from Attack of the Clones, when Obi-Wan's talking with Dex in his diner, and Dex says to him, I should think you Jedi, wow, blah, blah, blah. Should think you Jedi should know the difference between knowledge and wisdom. And I don't feel like the Jedi actually do know what the difference is between knowledge and wisdom. I don't think many in this galaxy know what the difference is between knowledge and wisdom. And I think that's kind of a lot of the Republic's problems, is they're not wise. They don't make thought-out logical decisions. And I think Fives often doesn't make super logical decisions either. Because, he's acting from his heart, and, he should, because he's trying not to lose his friend. And he cares. But I think if he'd taken a few more seconds to slow down, some maybe more logical, more rational ideas would have come to his head in this episode.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, I think also the second opinion thing, I think that's kind of saying also it's really hard to get a second opinion in the context of this episode, the wise benefit from a second opinion, but it's almost impossible for Fives to get a second opinion for Tup, just because of the situation that they're in, and that of course leads to tragedy.
Yeah. Where do you want to start with this one?
I don't know. Should we take it from the top? I think the subtle power structure between Nala Se and Shaak Ti and how she's trying to cover up the inhibitor chip with no molecular scans. I think that's interesting. I don't know what I mean. What do you think?
Yeah. It's a really interesting power struggle in all three of these episodes because Nala Se feels this sense of entitlement, is how I can put it. She feels entitled to deal with every clone the way that she feels she needs to. She clearly has a distrust of the Jedi, and so does Lama Su, and in a line that I'm going to reference I think it's at the beginning of the third episode, Lama Su... Actually, no, it's in this episode. Lama Su calls the Jedi a curious cult. Did you catch that one?
Yes, I did catch that.
How interesting that they refer to the Jedi as a cult. I was actually just having an entire conversation with somebody the other day. Are the Jedi a cult?
It's a good question.
they have some similarities. They have some major differences, but they have some similarities. Indoctrination of members from birth sounds like a cult. Also the Jedi. You know, do they all believe in one thing? Yeah, they do. I mean, the missing parts is they don't all worship one person, and they're a little more front-facing than most cults are. But yeah, I was just thinking about that the other day. What do you think, actually? Are the Jedi a cult?
No, I mean they're a religion, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
They have these ideas. What's interesting is that they're a religion. They've been turned also into, by the time of the Clone Wars, they've been turned almost into a paramilitary law enforcement agency.
Yep.
And obviously, as is very evident throughout the Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith, they really feel the need. The Jedi, because of their mission, kind of in life, in the universe, they feel the need to take on as much as they can to try and make the galaxy a better place. But in doing so, they kind of lose a little bit of who they are. You know, the Jedi are peacekeepers, not soldiers.
In this war,
well, they're sure
danger
used as soldiers.
Of losing who we are from Blair Grievous that we've mentioned thousands of times on this show. Also, I think the best meme I've seen for the role of the Jedi in the Clone Wars is, "We are keepers of the peace, not soldiers." And then it cuts to him cutting off Jango Fett's head. "Peace, motherfuckers!"
Yeah.
Actually, no, there was another version. "We are keepers of the peace, not soldiers." Didn't you chop off a guy's head? Peacefully. Yeah. You know who I want to talk about?
Who?
I want to talk about I want to talk about AZ345211896246598721347. Yes, I looked that up.
AZ.
AZ3.
We got to talk about AZ3. I think AZ3. You know, at first I was like, oh, he's just a droid, quirky droid. You know, maybe he's there for comic relief. But I mean, I think he plays a really important role because, like, the scene with AZ3 and Fives talking about names and numbers,
that's
is actually
shit
great
right there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, like,
yeah,
he's like, oh, it seems insignificant, and then Fives is like, it's not to me or any other clone.
Yeah,
and like,
okay, clone trooper.
It really is about the clone's individuality, and Fives is like an attempt to hold on to his individuality. Because I think in a way this entire arc is kind of about Fives trying to hold on to the clone's humanity and individuality as that is being swept away by everyone else, by the Jedi, by
absolutely.
the Republic, by the Kaminoans.
I agree with you about the whole individuality thing, and you know, we see that part of this episode is Fives investigating thing under the cover that he looks the same as everybody else does in the building. the clones are pretty uniform, and with the armor, they're even more uniform. The only way Fox can be identified is from that tattoo on his head, which is how the probe droid identifies him in the last episode, Fugitive. No, sorry, in the last episode, Orders. And we have this idea, we have these parallel struggles of individuality versus conformity. I also think we have a struggle in this arc. I mean, this is kind of a duh one, but like if you really think about it, it's kind of mind blowing. Of following orders versus following your instincts.
Explain how so.
I love that the Clone Wars does this. It has an arc start with the phrase "good soldiers follow orders," and then they make the entire arc about should good soldiers actually follow orders.
Yeah.
With a lot of stuff with Fives, Fives was supposed to go out into the field, and we find out that he's actually supposed to get his memory wiped in the next episode. But he disobeys that order, and he goes investigating himself. He disobeys in order to stay on Camino and goes to Coruscant. And then Fox, actually, we'll get to what Fox does, but Fox does follow orders, and look where that gets him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll talk about Fox and why I don't think he's actually like as terrible as people think he is.
He just makes a bad. I think he just makes.
He makes some bad decisions, but
yeah.
We can clearly see. We'll talk about this when we get to orders, but you can clearly see the regret on his face.
Yeah, you can. You can. He definitely makes a bad choice.
Yeah. 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 I love AZ3, and frankly, his quips are incredible.
Oh, yes.
I am sorry.
Oh, yes.
I've always wanted to have humans' feelings, but I do not. Goodbye.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of what his quips are there for, and to fast forward, to Fugitive as well, really quick. When Five says, "I'll see you on the other side," and AZ is like,
the other side of what?
Like, I think it really reinforces the clone's humanity and individuality by contrasting that against what it actually means to be an android, to be a robot, which I think is cool, and again, obviously very intentional as the clones are facing down kind of the end game of their puppet masters.
Yeah, I agree with that. By contrasting Fives with AZ, we get a clear sense of the clones' humanity before they get chipped, of course. Yeah. Also, by the way, I do love this. Do you like that the Kaminoans can contact Tyrannus directly? I really like that detail, and that they're just choosing to work behind the Republic's back the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, the Kaminoans, they're looking out for number one.
Oh, they totally are.
They are looking out for number one. They do not care. They want to make money. They want to make money by any means necessary.
Yeah.
If a dark hooded figure is offering you millions, billions of credits to tamper with the clones, they're not going to say no. They're not going to say no. Even Shaak Ti, I think she's not free from fault either, even though obviously she probably has more of the clones' interests in mind than Nala Se does. But even so, the way that, I know you said maybe she's just calling them property to try and speak Nala Se's language, and get what she wants. But even so, I mean, when she says like, "Oh, we need to be able to do this to Tup to protect others like him," and then Five says there aren't others like him, which both in a conceptual sense and a literal sense in the context of his ailment, that's profound. because he is. I think Fives is the only one who truly cares about Tup as an individual and as a human being, and isn't just interested in him because of Tipley or Tiplar.
Yeah. It's really weird, honestly, because it's like I was having this debate with myself. I'm like, wait, so Shaak Ti doesn't want Nala Se to terminate Tup. She wants to do a brain scan, which could possibly kill Tup. Both endings are the same.
Yeah.
Why
One's more
does she
certain,
care?
but still, yeah.
It doesn't make
I
a
mean,
lot of sense. Maybe the information is a little more is presented a little more accurately in the atomic level brain scan. But like it's really strange.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that Shaak Ti is doing a very good job of advocating for the clones. Actually, she's more interested in just getting to the bottom of the mystery. But I mean, you can't really fault her for that. But it definitely feels like we're seeing a different side of Shaak Ti than we were in season 3 in Clone Cadets.
Yeah, I agree. I will say this also. So T meets with the Jedi Council, and Yoda. I think it's Yoda. Either Yoda or Mace Windu suggests bringing Tup to the temple to have them investigate through the Force about Tup. I have one question for you, okay? So first of all, I mentioned this exact same scenario on another episode of In a Galaxy very recently, so you know what my question's going to be. Why didn't they just do that with Ahsoka? If they can investigate things through the Force, then, like, you had somebody who said they were innocent, but you had no way to prove it. Can you not just look into the Force about this thing?
I mean, maybe there's. I mean, but I think they're talking about you literally like using the Force to physically probe and analyze Tup's brain, which I think is a little bit different from using the Force to investigate matters across time and space as they would have to
Yeah.
with Ahsoka. But yeah, they definitely could have used the Force a little more there.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, if they're not if they're not talking about the same thing, they make it sound like they're talking about the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, granted.
If they're not equalizing it, they at least sound like they're equalizing it. Yeah. Do you got anything else before we get to the tumor?
No, let's go to the tumor.
So Tup develops a tumor, which is probably the reason for his death and the activation of the inhibitor chip as well. I will also say this. I love this line. There's an exchange between Fives and AZ3. We were not created to be disposed of this way. Perhaps you were.
Yeah,
It's a throwaway line. It like you move past it faster than most lines in this episode, but it's so incredibly profound now knowing what happens with AZ3 and his specific role in the dismantling of Kamino and the execution of Project Warmantle in season 1 of The Bad Batch. I can see the Kaminoan building sinking in my head. I can see also in my head, the clones being shuttled off world. I can see Nala Se herself facing punishments for what she's done by the Empire. It's watching this episode with the Bad Batch in mind, watching this arc with the Bad Batch in mind, provides so much more context for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. But yeah, the Bad Batch I think definitely brings so much more to this arc and just deepens the sense of mystery and intrigue that we get. And so yeah, I mean yeah, Tup's death. Yeah, it's tragic. Fives really wants to do the right thing. He thinks that he's doing the right thing, and I honestly think that he I also think that he's doing the right thing by removing the the chip, the inhibitor chip. Even though he dies shortly after. I don't.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Because I think that it seemed to me that the implication was just, oh, he's dying because his health is deteriorating and his well-being was not really the first thing that was being prioritized in his treatment.
Yeah, I think they could have done the whole thing with Tup very differently. I agree with you on that one. It's, the death of Tup is not something that's probably going to be generally talked about in the galactic history books, but it really should have been because it was a death that was completely preventable.
Yeah,
And it was a death that only happened really because I feel like of the Republic and the Kaminoans' incompetence, really.
yeah, and I don't even think it was necessarily their incompetence. I think they, at least the
The
Kaminoans,
Kaminoans knew, but
yeah, they knew. They were like, I mean, we see both the Republic, the Jedi, they're all thinking much more of trying to get to the bottom of the mystery and Tup as a tool of the Republic rather than really being concerned for his well-being. And I think the contrast with Fives then and why Fives, disagrees is because Fives is really concerned for his friend and his comrade.
yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. Yeah, it's it's a again Tup's death, as is most of this arc, is a real tragedy. Um, and and then Palpatine suggests that Tup's tumor, instead of the Jedi Temple, go to the Grand Republic Medical Facility, where of course he has control over everything.
Yeah.
And just like that, the chip, the malfunction inhibitor chip, is right back in Palpatine's hands.
Yeah. And I mean,
That's son of a gun.
this is just another instance to me of Palpatine and the Republic wresting control of something away from the Jedi, and to me, it's just a face palm that the Jedi let this happen again. That they just kind of, I mean, obviously they don't have much of a choice, but they just roll over and let the truth and let a chance at the truth once again be snatched away from them. And it seems, yeah, it just seems like the Jedi are being a little lazy and not doing their due diligence by not at least insisting to have an opportunity to look at Tup themselves.
Yeah, well,
And that's just something that we
T
see
does.
repeated throughout the in Clone Wars.
Yeah. In her defense, T is like, remember in the third episode, she's like, Tups, will go to, it didn't actually happen, but Tups will go to the Grand Republic Medical Facility, after it goes to the temple. But that obviously fails due to what happens later in the episode. In Fugitive, T and Fives debate with Say about exactly what to do with Tup's tumor before it's eventually decided that they're bringing the whole thing to Coruscant under the Jedi's authority. But Nala Say switches briefcases with the tumor to try and cover everything up. Unfortunately for her, Fives sees this, escapes his custody as he's going back to do one more physical. As he's walking back, he catches up with AZ3, who tells him that he's heard that he's going to have his memory erased, and be placed on sanitation detail. So he breaks free of his control, grabs AZ3, and looks at the tumor, and it indeed has been switched. And he and then he escapes with the tumor and AZ3. Meanwhile, the Kaminoans contact Dooku, and they're like, "Shit, Dooku, a renegade clone escaped with this chip," and he's like, "Get it back." Eventually, they make their way to the cloning chambers and the original sequenced genome of Jango Fett. eventually Fives has the realization that the chips are inside every single clone placed in there when they're barely embryos. So AZ3 does a procedure to remove Fives' inhibitor chip. And they remove it and they find it's completely normal and not tumored at all, and not malfunctioned at all. So Shaak Ti decides to bring Fives to Coruscant with Tup's tumor. And that's the episode. The fortune cookie is, when in doubt, go to the source.
I mean, as fortune cookies go, yeah, follow the trail. And it's just unfortunate where this trail ends for Fives, obviously.
Yeah.
But he does the right thing, and I think the Jedi could really learn a lesson from Fives about following the trail. I think they really could.
Absolutely. I think Fives does better investigative work than most of the Jedi do, frankly. Yeah, I find it interesting that Fives still greatly respects Master T, actually.
I mean, if you think about, remember what she did for them.
Yeah.
What she did for his clone group in Clone Cadets. Like,
Clearly
he's still...
God,
yeah.
Clone Cadets.
Even if she doesn't always have his best interests at heart, like, he still feels like she is more or less on his side, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I like the relationship between Fives and Shaak Ti, honestly. I think that Shaak Ti really cares about the clones as people, which is not something we see a lot. Except for with Anakin sometimes and Ahsoka.
I think the first scene where Shaak Ti and Nala Se and Fives are arguing, I think that's great. I really enjoyed that scene. It's sad though. Again, Fives, he just wants to help his friend, but he's just helplessly aware of the bigger picture, of the unimaginable forces that are at play, that are coming to bear, to try and keep him from learning the truth and from spreading the truth.
Yeah, again, we talk about this arc as a tragedy, and we talk about it, that kind of idea. I'll say this. Are you aware of the tale of Cassandra in Greek mythology?
I am not aware of the tale of Cassandra. I really love watching Fives in this episode. He just gets more and more likable as the odds are increasingly stacked against him. To me, he's super resourceful, emotive, and I love watching him go beast mode and escape.
Oh, absolutely.
It was a little bit surprising to me that all of a sudden he kind of
just snapped.
He kind of just snaps, and he's like, "Okay, this is the moment." He kind of knows. I think, like Ahsoka, obviously, his is more the bad ending. But I think, like Ahsoka, he knows. Okay, I've tried to convince everyone and no one's believing me. Like, I gotta look out for my own safety now.
I gotta run
because I'm at risk. Yeah. I gotta run. And similar to the Ahsoka arc in this episode, especially in the last episode, he just, as we'll get to, he's just always in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Absolutely.
And he is being, like Ahsoka, he's being framed. So like everything he does just feeds into...
Can and will be used against him.
Yeah, everything he does is used against him. Everything he does is manipulated because of the situation. Everything he does, he's manipulated into doing everything that will make him look bad, even though he's looking out for himself, and just trying not to be imprisoned, be cut up,
Yeah. I agree with you about that. By the way, I just want to point out just a funny moment that I love from it. When they're walking through that Kaminoan classroom. Okay, Izzy, act normal. Dude, la 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 la. Was that normal?
Yeah, I love that part as well.
Oh my god, it was there was so much tension and they broke the tension so incredibly well. Yeah. There's a line at the end where Fives is arguing with Nala say, "I am not a piece of hardware. I am a living being."
Yeah, I know. This is really, yeah.
I want to know more about the Kaminoans, specifically in canon, because, it's incredible how callously they treat their own creations. I want to know why they are the way they are a little bit more. We have some stuff in Legends. Do you know about the eugenics and the racism of Kaminoans in Legends?
I do not.
Oh, it's fascinating stuff. It's great. So basically, the Kaminoans' thing is genetic engineering. That's just kind of how their society works. Their thing is genetic engineering, right? So they genetically engineered all of themselves to have the same color eyes because they thought some colors of eyes were superior. They would kill anybody who had a certain color of eyes, and then, I think it was blue eyes were the upper class, green eyes were the lower class, and then brown eyes were immediately killed.
Wow.
So they just eugenicized their way out of racism. It's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's horrifying, but I find the stories that were predicted in Legends that were created about the Kaminoans in Legends just fascinating in so many ways. In comparing them to eugenics and racism in our own world, it's really crazy. You got anything else about this episode?
I don't know. Nala Se in her conversation with Dooku, thought it was really interesting to hear the fear in her voice when she was talking to Dooku, and it made me really curious more about what the direct Dooku Kaminoan connection was like. I thought that the symbolism of Fives putting on the shiny armor, the unmarked regular issue Phase 2 clone armor was crazy. As he's fighting to try and not have the clones kind of become these unthinking zombies that will kill their Jedi generals, as he's trying to say, I'm a person, Tub is a person. Even as he is doing that, he's being forced to don the standard issue armor with no identifying markings. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I don't know. It's just astounding to me in this episode how easy it is to lead, and in all these episodes, how easy it is to lead the Jedi away from the truth. Tell them something they want to hear.
And
tell them
they'll
something.
Just believe it.
Yeah, tell them something that they want to hear, and then they'll quip something about how, oh, we must find the truth, but the Force is clouded.
Clouded by the dark side it is.
Seems like the Jedi's thing is like, they're like, we must get to the bottom of this. We must find the truth. And then they just sit there and don't do anything at all.
Sit on cushions, we must.
Yes, sit on cushions and meditate. Yeah,
that's how it should have ended for 2.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
None of the Jedi are available. Sit on cushions, we must.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
We'll link that down in the description. Oh my god, it's hilarious. In orders, Fives is taken to Coruscant with Nala Se and Shaak Ti. On the shuttle to Coruscant, Nala Se injects some sort of drug into Fives, which makes him a bit more rash and generally nonsensical. Fives and T and Se talk with Palpatine about the whole ordeal, and they're trying to figure out exactly what this is, and then Palpatine requests some time alone with Fives, and Palpatine tells Fives something, and then implicates Fives in trying to kill him. Fives then runs from the authorities back down into the Coruscant underworld, like a certain commander of his did not a season ago. He then goes into a clone bar and meets up with Kix, who links him up with Anakin and Rex at a location in an old warehouse in the underworld of Coruscant. Unfortunately for Fives, a probe droid for the Republic also tracks him there. So just as Anakin and Rex get there and they talk with Five for a little bit, Commander Fox and some of the Coruscant Guard also get to the warehouse, and and Five pulls one of Rex's guns on them, and they shoot him dead right there. Fox shoots him dead right there. Five dies in Rex's arms, and then the Jedi talk with Palpatine after, and Palpatine's personal doctors realize that a parasite native to Ringo Vinda was the thing that made his chip malfunctioned. And just in case, they made inoculations for that parasite and are going to inoculate the entire clone army against that. And nobody suspects anything about the inhibitor chips. Meanwhile, Dooku contacts his master, and Palpatine says to Dooku, when the time is right, nothing will stop us from executing Order 66. And the arc ends. Okay. The fortune cookie is, the popular belief isn't always the correct one.
Boy, can you say that again?
What?
Boy, can you say that again?
Yep.
I mean, this is most true, I think, as I just said, for the Jedi, since obviously the Kaminoans and Palpatine are playing dumb to hide Order 66, but the Jedi, I think they're just not looking hard enough at the facts. They're more interested in hierarchy, protocols, maintaining the status quo, going back to business as usual. They say they want answers, but I don't think they want answers badly enough to even really try and get the truth. They care more about, subconsciously, I guess they care more about getting the answer that feels less threatening than maybe what is really the case.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was just the Jedi really, and especially Shaak Ti, but really all the Jedi really kind of disappointed me. In this arc. I don't know about you, but I was not too pleased with what I saw.
Yeah, the Jedi weren't the best in this arc. I will say this to you about this. So I'm not sure how familiar you are with philosophy. But have you ever heard of utilitarianism?
Yes, I've heard of utilitarianism.
This is utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is the philosophical idea that it treats decision making like a math problem, and its goals are to provide the most amount of good for the most amount of people. Basically, the popular belief under utilitarianism is the right thing to do, which directly pushes against this. This episode is anti-utilitarianism. It's a modern philosophy. The father of the modern utilitarianism is a British philosopher named Jeremy Bentham, and the popular belief is that Fives is crazy for saying all these things about the inhibitor chips, but he's right. The rebels in the original trilogy era are almost always aren't the popular belief. Look at Luke in 4. I don't like the Empire. I hate it, but there's just nothing I can do about it right now.
Yeah.
But just because something is widely believed doesn't mean it's true. It's a dangerous hazard that Palpatine often uses, because he'll just say things, and because he's the Chancellor, people will believe him, and nobody's going to question him, because why would they?
Yeah, because he's so well liked and he has this persona,
Absolutely, yeah. So I find it very interesting, the philosophical underpinnings of this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. You made some really good points. But yeah, about this episode, I know, just starting off with it is to me absolutely terrifying how Palpatine can manipulate everybody, and the Jedi especially just accept it and go along with it. The way he manipulates the narrative when he's faced directly with the chips, and you see his face, he's scowling as he sees the two tumors in the glass slides. and then in an instant, once he goes into that room with Fives, in an instant he's just able to take control again so easily.
Yeah.
It's terrifying
By the way,
to like
yeah.
to think about having to face that if I was in Star Wars. It's just
Yeah.
terrifying.
What Palpatine does with the narrative is masterful, to say the least.
Oh yes.
I do want to ask you, how does Shaak Ti not notice that Nala Se drugs Fives? Like, she's
Yeah.
standing
Like
right there.
he's just loopy. Like he's so loopy. How does she not?
No,
Yeah.
but like, as he's stabbed with the syringe, she's standing like 6
Yeah,
feet
yeah.
away from them. How does she not notice that? I'm so confused. But anyway,
At some point he even says like they drugged me.
yeah, but nobody
Like
believes him
it's
for some reason. I don't know.
it's such a shame.
It is
It's
such a shame. I will say, did you notice the Revenge of the Sith-esque imagery in
Yes.
the beginning of this episode?
The medical center.
We have the red row guards, first of all. And second of all, that medical center looks a lot like the medical center where Darth Vader was given his cybernetics at the end of Revenge of the Sith.
Canonically, it's actually in the same medical complex.
Oh, that's good!
Yes, it is confirmed on StarWars.com in the episode guide. It is confirmed in the trivia gallery. It is confirmed that they are in the same medical complex. However, it's actually not the same room.
But like,
although I think
all
that
the
would be
rooms
insane.
in the medical complex are designed, I'd assume, pretty similarly.
Yeah, it's like you look at that and you're like, wow.
Yeah,
like
that's a choice. That's an artistic choice they made because we're again, one of the main purposes of the Clone Wars as a series is to bridge the gap between clones and Sith. This is directly tying into Revenge of the Sith as a movie. It's incredible, frankly. Yeah, and it's great. I loved that part of the episode. Just seeing that room, I'm like, I recognize that room.
Yeah, I know. It was a incredible moment, I thought. But then, once Fives escapes again, Shaak Ti, she's like, she says Fives may no longer be the man you knew, referring to the inhibitor chip being removed. I'm like, really, Shaak Ti? How easily swayed are you? Like, come on. Man, it's just frustrating watching the Jedi in this episode and this episode especially. We get so close to the truth. We get so close to the truth being revealed.
Absolutely.
And then it isn't because Fives has been drugged. And the most heartbreaking thing about this episode, I think, is that when Fives faces Rex and Anakin, he kind of is insane because of the mental stress that he's under and the fact that he's been drugged and he can't communicate. And to me, that's one of the saddest parts of all, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. We get so incredibly close. There's that line. Also, I gotta say, my favorite line in the entire episode, maybe the entire arc, is Palpatine saying to Fives, "No. Where were we?"
Oh, yeah.
It's the instantaneous transformation from Palpatine to Sidious in one line.
Yeah.
It's an incredible transformation.
Yeah. Like, even if you don't know anything about Palpatine's double identity, the people around him got to be thinking at that point, like, how is everyone not thought? Maybe they do think, God, this guy is creepy.
Well,
like, this guy is off his rocker.
Well, Shaak Ti and Nala Se are not in the room.
Yeah, they're not. But I just mean, like, he does that so often in the Clone Wars. Like,
oh yeah,
even when he is facing, when he's facing the Jedi, talking to Padme, whatever it is, he just he there is something about him. I like to think I would have picked up on it, but maybe not.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? Yeah, but it's incredible. Also, here's my main question to you about this episode. What do you think Palpatine told Fives? We never know.
I think Fives kind of says, he says, like, Palpatine told me. So I think Palpatine was maybe trying to kill Fives. I don't know. And maybe my theory is that because we hear Fives say like Palpatine told me like he told me this stuff, like my theory was that Palpatine decided it would be fun, or for whatever reason he tells Fives, and then he tries to have his clones kill him, or maybe make that commotion. But then obviously we saw Fives like take out like 5 or 6 clone troopers hand to hand on Camino. So I think that maybe Fives was able to overpower the other clones. But then rather than use the Force, which could expose himself, if the Jedi were able to sense it or see that he died not from a blaster, I think Palpatine was like, okay, he tried to kill me, rather than try and kill him himself. That would be my theory.
See, my thing is, I thought Palpatine's entire goal was to set up the situation as, oh, he's trying to kill me.
Interesting.
Because I thought what would happen is Palpatine would tell Fives a part of the truth, which would make Fives so mad he would attack Palpatine in his dazed state, which would then be framed against him, even though he was right.
That is a possibility as well. I think. Yeah, to me that's the second most. Actually, to me that's like as good of a possibility. Yeah, just the way that Palpatine was saying, "Oh, where were we?" and the fact that he really wanted to be alone. It seems to me. I mean, either way, either he wanted to be alone so that he could manipulate Fives into attacking him, or he wanted to be alone so he could silence Fives. Either way, the end goal is the same, where he wants to manipulate the story and change the narrative.
Yeah. Also, again, I literally wrote down, and I know we've already talked about the similarities between this arc and Ahsoka's trial, but I literally wrote down, are none of the Jedi getting deja vu with this in Ahsoka's trial? Like, none of them? None of them even bring it up.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think strange.
Yeah. Maybe they just... Who knows? It's a little bit of mystery. Who knows?
Yeah, it's weird.
I want to go back to the bar scene, the clone bar scene, because I thought that was interesting. The idea of that there is a clone bar scene, I think, and the fact that he went there symbolically was important, because this is where the clones, they have their helmets off, they're partying. It's the one time where they're not doing something specifically to benefit the Republic.
Yeah.
And even then, they're only allowed to do it probably because the Republic decided, oh, if we let them go out and party sometimes, it'll be good for morale.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see how they've formed their own identity in this group as they stick up for Fives, kind of not, I guess, for whatever reason, not paying for the taxi. And clearly they've kind of formed their identity.
They're also drunk.
They are drunk. Like, they've formed an identity as a group separate from other sentient beings as clones. And they really stick together, which I honestly, though, it might be a little bit ironic, but I don't think that is contrary to the idea that the clones also have a lot of individuality that maybe the Kaminoans didn't want or did not anticipate them developing. The fact that they're kind of
absolutely, they have an individual identity and they have a group identity. Those things are not mutually exclusive. Yeah. Do we want to go straight to the warehouse, or do you have stuff before the warehouse?
I don't know. I just love the bar scene. Not too much to say about it, but it was incredible. Just the sense of desperation. To me,
it's a new environment, is what it is.
It almost felt like Fives was a dead man walking. In this scene, the way he was moving, the way he was just interacting with his environment, the way it all felt, just trying so hard to save himself and his friends from the inevitable tide of the dark side in Order 66. But yeah, he's so hopelessly outmatched by these forces beyond his comprehension, that he's a dead man walking. Yeah. And it's kind of his last gasp attempt to make things right.
I agree with that. Do we want to go to the warehouse now?
Let's do it.
So Anakin and Rex go to the warehouse, and they're trapped in a ray shield by Fives, who tries to explain the plan to them, but of course Fox barges in with the Coruscant Guard, and eventually he shoots Fives. And I want you to notice that after he shoots Fives, Fox takes off his helmet. Star Wars loves the helmet symbolism. The helmets in Star Wars represent a lot of homogeny. They represent a lot of, the sameness, the part of the group sort of thing. But as soon as you take off the helmet, you have the individuality. As soon as you take off the helmet of Darth Vader, he becomes the Jedi Anakin Skywalker. As soon as you take the helmet off of Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, he becomes Din Djarin, the person. As soon as you take the helmet off of Boba Fett, he ceases to be Boba Fett the armor and becomes Boba Fett the person. And when he takes the helmet off of Fox, he no longer is Fox the clone, he's Fox the person.
Yeah.
And, we see the entire Coruscant Guard circled around Fives with their helmets off. And I think they realize what they just did, and I think they realize what they were complicit in. And it's this incredibly dramatic and just soulful scene.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way that the system works to kind of pit all the clone troopers against anyone who kind of breaks the conformity of their mandate in any way, even though they're brothers, is incredible, to the point where Fox kind of kills Fox just straight up kills Fives.
Yeah.
And to be fair, it's not entirely without reason, but he could have stunned him. He could have there were other ways, and
and he just
ultimately he made that choice, which is really tragic, but it just really shows the mastery with which Palpatine kind of created this self-reinforcing system.
And let's go back to good soldiers follow orders.
Yeah,
Fox
again
is a good soldier. The real fortune cookie of this arc, I wrote down: good soldiers follow orders, but good people follow their heart.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right.
Yeah,
I think that's a good way to look at it.
Fox obeys orders, but look what that gets him. One of his colleagues dead.
Yeah.
In the name of what?
Yeah. Not just a colleague, a brother.
A brother, yeah. Someone with his own DNA.
I know.
It's truly tragic.
Absolutely. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's this arc is just
it's chef's
it hurts.
Kiss.
It's so beautiful, and it's chef's kiss, but it hurts so bad too at the same time.
It really does. I will.
Fives' death scene.
Ugh, it's awful.
It's just heartbreaking.
Yeah. By the way,
he's so pure in his intentions, but the system is just set up so that he won't be believed.
Hashtag RIP to a real
one. Yes. Yes. And then to follow that scene up with Palpatine, every day we grow closer to victory.
Based on what, buddy? Based on what? God.
I mean, though, the double meaning of that, the double entendre.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
He's talking to the Jedi and talking about the Republic,
but he's also talking about himself. Sith.
Yeah, he's clearly also talking about the Sith.
Oh,
like,
that's very
at that
smart.
point,
I did not
Palpatine,
notice that.
He's just having too much fun with it.
He is
you
having.
gotta hand it to
He's
him.
having
He's
so
having
much
with
fun.
it. Yeah, he's having too much
early
fun.
in the episode, he was like, a separatist plot before the war started. That seems so unlikely. I'm like, shut up, Palpatine. You're having way too much fun with this.
No, he's such a manipulator that
he's having way too.
You have to laugh. It's amazing.
It's hilarious. Oh my god!
This arc is just astonishing to me. To wrap up my thoughts on it, it's pretty crazy. What they did, how well they executed this arc. I think it's kind of amazing. When we get to these later seasons of the Clone Wars, how much they take on and how well they execute it.
Yeah. Oh, it's incredible.
Because just because you take on an important storyline doesn't guarantee that you're gonna do it right.
You're gonna kill it, but they killed it.
Yeah, they killed it. They killed it with Ahsoka. They killed it with all of season 5, and they killed it here.
They killed it with season 6. I will also just ask you one more thing before we wrap this whole thing up and talk about our overall thoughts about the arc.
Yeah.
What did you think about Palpatine ending the whole thing by saying nothing will be able to stop us from executing Order 66?
I don't know. What do you mean? I
feel like it's a bit ham-fisted, but I also love it.
Yeah. I think
it's like so perfect.
Like, just in case you didn't understand what these past 4 episodes were about. Just in case
you don't know what's happening, we're going to spell it out for you so clearly you cannot possibly miss it. Yeah.
Good thing no clones overheard that conversation, though.
Oh, good thing, yeah.
Or else they would have...
Or else things would have been
back to square one.
Back to square one.
Back to square one.
Damn it! Still close. Entire arc's work of progress just gone.
Just like that.
So yeah, I agree with what a lot of what Jacob says. It's an incredible start to the Lost Missions, and I love this arc. I love season 6's just general tone. It's probably my favorite season of this show, honestly. Season 6, and I love the it's just such a well executed arc, and it has so many interesting themes about individual versus conforming to a group, and following orders and all that kind of stuff. I also like the impact that it's had. This arc has more of an impact than people give it credit for. It directly impacts things that have happened not only in the rest of the show, but also in the Bad Batch and in Star Wars Rebels, and even in the Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett. It's impacted things like that. And yeah. It's great. It's a beautiful arc. What is your ranking for these 4?
Man, I really enjoyed all of them, honestly. It's hard for me to give them a ranking, although I would say I think I have to put Orders at number 1. Fugitive at number 2. Amazing as well. Conspiracy was the episode that surprised me the most with how much I enjoyed it, at least compared to previous times that I'd watched it. And then at number 1, but not by much, The Unknown.
At number 1?
Or sorry, at number 4. At number 4. Yeah. My bad.
So you did top to bottom. I thought I was going to go that way. I'm actually going to surprise people by saying this. I'm going to say number 4, Conspiracy. Number 3, The Unknown. Number 2, Orders. And number 1, Fugitive. I think Orders is probably a better executed episode than Fugitive, but I like watching Fugitive a little bit more because I like Fives uncovering the mystery a little bit more. And because Orders is almost a little too sad, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the concepts it executes, Wrong Jedi actually executes better than it does. But yeah, that's it for our analysis of these episodes. Now we get to the everybody's favorite part of Star Wars in a Galaxy. What you've brought me to die is worth 1 quarter portion.
Yes, everybody's favorite part. And today we are doing some Star Wars opinions where we ask each other questions about our Star Wars opinions.
Yep, absolutely. Let's get into it. You go first.
All right. Eli, if you could add on one extra season to any Star Wars show, either presently in production or past, which would it be? And if it's a show that's in progress, I guess you just have you'd have an extra season dropped in your lap, ready to binge watch.
Yeah, Star Wars Resistance Season 3, do it.
Yeah. I think that's a good choice because that show is really kind of hampered
Yeah.
by I think only having
Two
two seasons
yeah.
when they really just needed more time.
Yeah.
It needed more time.
I know your answer already, but Resistance
Yes.
Season 3, but you say
Yeah.
Rebels Season 5.
Yeah, I think a Rebels season 5 or even even just a one season Rebels follow-up show
Yeah.
would be I think it would be amazing.
I think they're going to do a lot of that stuff in live action, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, I kind of hope that I wish that they wouldn't do so much live action because I think that I love the animation. I feel like that's where those characters were really created and really earned themselves a place in our hearts and in our minds. So
Yeah.
I would love to see that honored by seeing more of that done in animation. But if not, so be it. I'm sure it'll be very interesting either way.
Yeah, absolutely. My first question to you. What is the next character that you want a Book of Boba Fett-esque, character-driven show for?
Man, who do I want a character-driven show for? That is an excellent question. I feel like there are a lot of options. I think I'm tempted to say some characters that really don't have a lot of airtime, but I feel like the Book of Boba Fett wouldn't have been successful if it had been based only on the mystique of Boba Fett from 5 and 6. I think that the fact that we saw a little bit of Boba Fett in the Clone Wars, for example, really kind of helped out his case for having his own show. So with that in mind, I think it would be amazing to see a show about, I think, Wedge Antilles.
Oh,
I really think, a lot of the comics, I'm thinking about a lot of the old Legends Marvel comics, not the super old ones from the 80s, but 90s, 2000s, the Legends comics, some of
and the X-Wing
the feats
books.
that he pulls off in the X-Wing books and in the comics. I can't remember the name of this one comic I have of him and Luke and some other pilots are doing all these amazing things trying to search for a new rebel base post Hoth, and I would just really like to see him explored more as a character. So that would be my pick.
That's a good choice. My personal pick, I think, would be Lor San Tekka. I think because this guy is a member of the Church of the Force, which is basically a religious group that believes in the Force as the Jedi do, but they don't actually have the power of the Force. And I think you get into some really interesting ideas as to, why was he hiding on Jakku? What was he doing with Luke's map? What connection does he have with Luke? And, that sort of, how does he know Leia and all that kind of stuff. I want to know more about that character and his past. I think it'd be interesting. And we could explore the galaxy more post-original trilogy and pre-sequel trilogy era. I think it would just be really interesting to have a Book of Lor San Tekka show or something like that. Okay, what's your
Absolutely.
next? What's your next one?
Next question. Which Star Wars Legends book or comic really, really needs a canon on-screen adaptation?
Darth Plagueis.
Yeah, Plagueis, amazing. I'm going to say Darth Bane.
Oh,
the Bane
that
trilogy.
too. That would have been my second choice, but yeah.
Both incredible. Both
and Lucino wrote
just
for
absolutely
canon.
gripping.
Lucino wrote for canon, and I know
Yeah.
Karpyshyn, who wrote the Bane books, wants to do some things for canon. So
Yeah. Hashtag free Karpyshyn.
hashtag free
that would
Karpyshyn.
That would be amazing to see him to see him do something for canon.
Yeah. Okay. My final Star Wars opinions question. call out for me what you think is an underrated twist in anything Star Wars.
An underrated twist.
Yeah.
In anything Star Wars. That is an interesting question. That is a very interesting question. Underrated twist in anything Star Wars. I can't think of a lot of twists off the top of my head, to be honest. I think maybe this is a little bit niche since it's a book, but I think Thrawn meeting Anakin in Thrawn Alliances, that to me, that whole thing was pretty awesome and pretty unexpected.
Yeah.
So I would say Thrawn Alliances.
I totally, yeah, I remember reading that, and I remember being very interested in that storyline. Mine personally would be probably that Colossus is a mobile space station at the end of Resistance Season 1. Like, it was an extension of the theme that we got in the 4th season of Rebels, but we actually got to see this whole mobile base thing in action. And, you know, that, it completely flipped the show upside down for its second season, and took us to some really interesting places, where the Colossus almost became like the Ghost for that second season in a lot of interesting ways.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I think that's going to be it for this episode of Star Wars in a Galaxy, watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. Thank you, as always, for listening to this episode. Next week, this episode is posting on the 2-year anniversary of the posting of the first episode of Star Wars in a Galaxy. Next week, we're going to take a little time to celebrate. Jacob and I are going to do a retrospective episode on the first 2 years of Star Wars in a Galaxy and all of our favorite memories from doing so. The week afterwards, we can make this announcement now. Episode 2 of Season 9 is going to be our first guest spot of 2022. Jacob and I are so thrilled to welcome Laura and Alice of Star Wars Force Toast, a Star Wars happy hour, the incredible Star Wars podcast. We've been wanting to get them on for such a long time, and we finally managed to get a date that works for all of us. And we'll be talking about the Rush Clovis arc in Season 6. We're so excited for them to join us. And so that's what the next 2 weeks is going to be like for Star Wars in a Galaxy. In the meantime, you can follow us on Twitter at InAGalaxyPod. Follow us on Instagram at Star Wars in a Galaxy. You can listen to us on Spotify and you can listen to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and Anchor, and wherever you listen to your podcast, we'll be there. If we're not, email us. For next week, we are welcoming questions and messages and all that kind of stuff for about the first 2 years of In a Galaxy and what we have planned for the third one. So email us at swinagalaxy@gmail.com. I think that's it. Oh, leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify if you can. It really does help our visibility. And in the meantime, may the Force be with you. Always.
Always.